first thing, get the wrong button. So as we get started into this, if you do not have a copy already, you may want to grab a copy of this year's garden calendar that WVU Extension has provided to people throughout West Virginia. And if you're not in the state and can't get outside, we do have that available online, and that link is later on in the slideshow for you to just access that easily from your own home. Click the link and you go to the website and print it off or download to your computer for convenience. If you are in Wayne County, we do have some copies available still at the office as of Friday. I was last there. We have some that are in the mailbox on our porch, along with inside the little library.
I got it. It seems to be working.
Okay, as you do enter the group, please mute yourself. Okay, so to give you an overview of what we'll be talking about for at least the next 4 weeks, this class could go longer depending on the interest and what all the problems you all are experiencing in your gardens at home. Tonight, it'll be plot and plan. We'll talk about site selection, preparation, and some gardening techniques you may want to adopt for your practice this year. It's always fun to get out there and learn a new technique and try to see what you can improve on, what you did last year. If this is your first year, that's great because that might mean you don't have any bad habits, because bad habits are hard to break, especially when it comes to gardening, because that's a lot of routine. Well, this is what I do every year. I put 100 pounds of triple 19 down in my garden. That may not be the best thing to go with. So you may think about how your habits are. Next week, we'll be talking about seed and grow. That is crop selection based on varieties and plant spacing, along with some resistant varieties you'll look to and heirlooms. And then May 12th, it'll be what we've called slug-a-bug, good bugs, bad bugs, and the other pests that we may encounter this growing season. That will also include disease, fungus, and bacteria. And then May 19th, we're planning to do a reap and keep. That's proper harvesting, storage, and preservation methods to better utilize the produce you've grown this spring, summer, and later in the fall. That way you can enjoy it into the winter and into the next spring as well. For the first thing to start off with when you're thinking about gardening, you want to make sure you have good tools to work with. A dull edge is a dangerous edge. Just like you're working in the kitchen, you do not want to have a dull edge on your tools outside. So these are some of the tools you will need or may like to purchase to utilize inside your garden, your raised bed, high tunnel, whatever it might be. And they do have different uses because that's what they were designed to do. So you may think about getting a spade for digging and lifting. Forks are good to get into the soil and into the mulch, turn that over, and carrying as well. Rakes, that's good for smoothing the top of your garden or your beds, and gathering. So if you're gathering some mulch up or leaves, you can use your other hand to pinch that matter against the rake and haul that away, or put in your wheelbarrow to haul away later too. Another is trials for transplanting. This will really help you get a better boost to those plants you're going to transplant from the packs you'll get this spring at the local hardware store or local greenhouse or the FFA chapter. And then a tiller to break that soil up to really get that soil ready to go to put plants in the ground. Okay, for the first rule on getting started is start small. I know a lot of people this year are thinking is bigger is better. That may not be the case, especially if this is your first year. And the majority of you, according to the survey, those that have completed it, over half, you've been gardening for less than 5 years, which is great. It's wonderful to see. You want to make sure you start small. Think about your sun and water access. And you want a fertile, well-drained soil. And then we'll think about possible problems as well at that site. So starting small. So first thing is, a lot of people are home right now. We have more time than we normally have this time of year. But think about, okay, we may start opening back up here in a few weeks. That big garden may get put on the back burner because you have other obligations you have to meet now. You may start out with just using one raised bed or grow some plants in containers if you don't have that space. It's a great thing to put out in the front patio or the back patio. Okay, for the first thing is you got to think about sun and water. These are two natural resources your plants will need to utilize to be able to be productive this summer. General rule of thumb is your plants will need 8 to 10 hours of full sun per day. Now that may differ depending on the variety you have. So make sure you look on the package or contact your local extension agent if you have questions on a certain variety you're thinking about planting this year. So you want either west or south facing sites are preferred. Radish and lettuce, they prefer partial day of shade. So you may think about planting them closer to the tree so they get some shade off that tree or your awning or your house. Take time and observe and make notes in order to locate the garden in the best area of your landscape. Now, a lot of people are extremely limited on their garden space, so you really got to focus on that. Okay, do I really need is that really the best place I need to put that garden, or should I move it a little bit 6 foot the other direction? Because, okay, you see the picture on the screen. That building has a lightish tan white siding, which is allowing that sun to reflect its light off that siding back into the plant. So that side is also getting some UV rays as well. Okay, sunny questions to ask. It's a really sunny day here in southern Mason County where I'm at right now. Is there sun in the early morning? Is it blocked by a hill, a house, a big barn? Is the site in the shadow of neighboring trees, shrubs, fences, or other structures? You may have that big vinyl privacy fence around your backyard, and that morning sun is not going to be able to get to that. At noon, is the entire area in full sun? It should be in full sun. That way you get a little bit more sunlight during the day. And if it's not, that means there's something directly over top of it, keeping those sun rays from getting down into your plants. And then go back out. What are the light conditions at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock p.m.? Those tend to be a little bit more intense days, and you may not think about it. But when my previous job, we had a turkey house. The sunlight came through really strong because it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that was a strong beam of light, and the birds didn't like it. So you got to think about those different times of day, the strength of the sun, and what other obstacles may be in the way at that time as well. And then sun and water. Plants require water to grow properly. And then you make sure you don't add too much water. Plant near a water spigot and plant near the house. These two should go hand in hand, because if it's out of sight, out of mind, if you have the big garden down the road at your cousin's house and you don't see it every day, you're like, oh, I'll get to those weeds tomorrow, or the next day, I don't have time to get there today. It's not really bothering anything. Nobody can see it. That is where you get into those bad habits or those ruts of, oh, well, it'll be fine. I'll get there next week and get it. They won't grow that much. And once we get into June and July, we get some really wet periods during that time. And it gets about impossible. It gets you really down the dumps. You can't get in there and weed that garden, till that soil as you would like. And then plant near the water spigot. This makes it easy to haul water or run a water hose. If you're not really near a water source, it's going to make it very difficult for you to grow this year. And make sure you're using good, clean water. There are some people that like to collect water off the roofs. There are some of those roofs you may want to stay away from. It may have some chemicals inside that's not good for your food grade vegetables you like to eat this summer. Okay, so you've selected a site. Okay, I'm gonna go with that place. Let's see how it does. Okay, so according to the survey you all did, 92 or 93% of you had not conducted a soil sample within the last 3 years, which that's fine. A lot of people haven't, as shown in that survey, but that's a very vital tool to use if you're planning to grow vegetables this summer. Because, okay, people that have kids, you don't want your kids to not have their vitamins, nutrients, because they won't grow as properly as you'd like. So that's where we need to do a soil sample. Okay, so you need to test for a well-drained soil. That's step one. Okay, you picked out the garden lot. Okay, dig a bucket-sized hole. Take a gallon or 8-quart bucket. Dig a hole in the ground about that size. Fill your bucket with water, and then dump that water in the hole. Come back 24 hours later, and that water should be drained out. If it has not drained out within that 24-hour period, that soil does not drain well, and you can't have problems this summer, especially if you get some root rots in there and the roots will drown out. Okay, so then you want a soil pH of a 6.2 to 6.8 for most crops you'll plant. Tomatoes, they like a little bit more acidic. Blueberries, they really like acidic. So if you're thinking about blueberries and you have a lower pH, that might work best for you. And a couple years ago, WVU installed a new soil testing lab. We've had the same equipment for several years. We got new upgraded equipment, which allows us to get a better analysis for your soil sample to use for your garden, hayfield, pasture, flower bed, whatever it might be. And as of last week, we did have 3 new crop codes installed on our soil sample form for West Virginia. These are related to the industrial hemp. Those that are doing industrial hemp that have permits from Department of Ag, that's important to look at. These are the crop codes available. They're not on the sheets yet. So if you know somebody that's in that program, you may let them know that they can get a soil analysis for their hemp. Okay, so to sample soils, you want to go, depending on your size, if you want about 10 to 15 to 20 samples throughout your area, whether it be your garden you've used forever, your raised beds, a pasture, a hayfield, your front lawn. You'll take 10 to 20 samples through that area, and you'll want to go between 2 to 6 inches deep to get an accurate soil sample. You'll take those samples, put them in a bucket, mix them around, put them on a plate for a couple days, up off the ground, someplace where another animal can't get onto it because it'll knock your soil over, and let that soil dry for a couple days. That will, first, one thing, it'll help get a quicker turnaround time to get that soil back to you, your analysis, and second, it will save on shipping. The WVU Soil Testing Lab is able to provide a free service to those in West Virginia, so our soil samples are free for in-state residents. It is $10 for those people that are out of state, but make sure you check with your local county extension agent if you're in Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Rhode Island, or wherever you may be, and see what they have available for you as well. And right now, generally during normal times, it's about 8 to 12 day turnaround by the time they get the samples in Morgantown and you get the results back. And if you do drop them off up there yourself when the university is open, that turnaround time is a little bit quicker. Okay, you took your sample, and now what do you do? Okay, you can go to our website, WVU Soil Testing Lab website, or visit your local county extension office and pick up a soil submission form. These kind of get confusing and overwhelming at a time when you haven't saw them before, but I'll talk you through it, and it's a little bit easier to understand. So this is the bottom half, the front part of that sample sheet. The top half is your general information, your name, address, email, contact information, that type of thing. The second half is where this part comes in important for you to fill out properly. Your sample ID. If you have 6 raised beds you went with, you have 3 on the left, 3 on the right. You want to take a soil sample from each bed. That way you can get a better idea of what's going on in each bed, because your first 3 may be older beds, and your second 3 are going to be older, and they may have different soil compositions. You got soil from Lowe's one year, you got soil from Walmart or the guy down the street, and you put that soil in there. So you'll make sure you have those beds ID'd. Okay, I'm going to go to my left side. My left L1's my left bed, the first bed I come to as I come in the gate. That's going to be your sample ID. County ID is, if you're in Wyoming County, West Virginia, put Wyoming County. That's important too, because that'll kick a result. I'll kick your analysis back to that county agent to better serve you, or the closest ag agent to serve you. And then previous management. If in that L1 bed you had tomatoes last year, put tomatoes in there so they could see what was going on before. And the new ones, our new forms actually are asking for a high tunnel sample, if you have a high tunnel or not, because we have seen a huge increase in high tunnel production in West Virginia. And that gives them an idea, okay, this is what's going on in the high tunnels in West Virginia. And that gives us a better idea of what kind of education we need to provide our producers. For those that are in the organic gardening and need certified organic, you need to improve your organic matter consistently. That's $6 per charge. If you're in the high tunnel production, you need to do that electrical conductivity or the EC sample that measures basically the salt levels in your high tunnel. Okay. We will get to what's a high tunnel here in a second. Thank y'all. Okay. And then size of sample. You're not sure on the size of your acre or your half acre, the plot in your backyard. Google Maps and Web Soil Survey both have measuring tools to measure out how big of an area you're going with. But if you're going with 2x4, 2x6s, you can rope that off and measure it yourself pretty easily by yourself. Predominant soil series, that can be very confusing if you've never done it before. If you haven't, shoot me an email. Shoot me an email and I'll do my best to help you and get hold of your county agent as well to get that information to you. Crop code, there's two forms. Okay, if you go on the online, crop code, counties were taken, and predominant soil series, and tillage code and soil texture. Those have drop-down features if you're doing it into Adobe. And that's easier for the people in the lab to read than most people's handwriting. The crop code comes from the back side of the sample sheet. And if you're growing a home garden, I believe it's H01 home garden, you put that in there. If it's raised beds, put raised bed in there in the comment section so they can see what's going on. If you're doing blueberries, strawberries, corn, green beans, put those crop codes in there because that is important so they get an accurate amount of that way they can get an accurate recommendation to you, because your corn is not going to need the same amount of nitrogen as your green beans or peas, because your green beans and peas are legumes. They'll fix that nitrogen, put that nitrogen back into the soil. That's why you see large row crop producers, they'll rotate their field between soybeans and corn every other year to keep that nitrogen content in the soil, and that's cheaper on fertilizer as well. For soil texture code, if you go to do your soil series, it tells you what the soil texture code is. And then tillage code, if you're going no-till, conventional, other, put that information there as well. Especially if you're going in to try to increase your organic matter, you're going to want to do less. You're going to want to do more no-till than conventional, because that allows that organic matter to build up on the surface. And if you've limed your area within the last 12 months, check that box. Yes, that way, because if you're putting lime on the soil and they see that your pH is a 5.8, okay, I'm trying to address that. I've put lime on there. You may not need as much lime because that lime does take time to break down into the soil to get an accurate reading. Okay, so this is what my example of a completed submission form should look like. I'm hitting wrong buttons. Maybe move everybody's face out of the way. Okay, so as I said, you have a garden sample. This was taken in Wayne County. It was a brand new garden. Previously, it was a lawn, so I put lawn in there. And then predominant soil series. If you're along creek bottoms, from what I've found out, most of those are going to be the Sensible soil series. And your soil texture code will come from that as well. And this is some of the information you put in there so you get a better idea to give you an accurate result on your submission form. For those that are going to try to do this at home, this is the directions, a brief overview for Web Soil Survey. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of that because I could be here for 3 hours just doing that, and it's not really going to help you that much. So you need to click the green button. It's Start WSS or Web Soil Survey. You just type in Web Soil Survey into Google. It'll pop up. This is the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And then it'll ask for an area of interest. You need to type in your address there, and it'll take it pretty close to where that address is for that soil sample. And then you'll need to click the AOI, which stands for area of interest. You'll put dots around that perimeter. And hit double click when you're complete, and it will bring up a bunch of different lines and letters on the map. And then you need to go to click soil map on the tab for the soil series name. Most of these soil series are named after places, locations that they were first discovered in, or where there's a high concentration of that soil series. And that's very important to find out as well, because if you have Ashton silt loam compared to Gilpin silt loam, your recommendations on fertilizer is going to be a little bit different. And this is what a submission for your soil analysis will look like, or similar to, depending on the results of your test. So this is some raised beds I did at Barbersville Elementary, the little high tunnel they have out back before everything got shut down. And the soil pH in those were actually a 7.0, which we kind of want to bring that down to that 6.6 to 6.8 range. But overall, the nutrients in that soil was actually fairly good. You want to see it in the green. You don't want it, that green can get to blue, which means there's way too many nutrients inside that soil, and doesn't allow those other nutrients to react how you want them to for your plants. Okay, and then you go to the bottom. It says, okay, you need 0 to 7 ounces of nitrogen. Okay, so when you go to Walmart, Lowe's, wherever to get a fertilizer bag, it's going to have 3 numbers on that bag. Okay, I'm going to use 12 as an example. The first 12 is nitrogen. The second 12 is phosphorus, and the third 12 is potassium or potash. Those are important numbers to recognize. That way you can adjust how much fertilizer you need to put on your ground. And some will come with an ag lime. Most of your soil samples, if you're not buying manufactured soil, will come with an ag lime recommendation, because most of our soil in West Virginia for eons was forest land, and the trees make that soil more acidic than they do basic. So this is going to you want 0 to 7 ounces of N, 2 ounces of P2O5, or 4 ounces and 4 ounces of K2O. So that's going to be, you want some ounces of 12, 19, 10 helps with that. To get an exact recommendation on that, contact your local extension agent or contact me, because this can vary case by case, farmer by farmer, field by field even. And even if you've got your front yard and backyard, that can vary as well. Okay, so you've picked out your place. The soil samples came back okay. They came out pretty good. They didn't come out, if you get the soil series and those numbers are in the red, I would really wouldn't advise planting into that field this year. That's going to take some time to build up those nutrients. Okay, so the next thing you think about is, okay, what problems do I have when I go to this area? First one for a lot of people is going to be deer. Even if you're in urban areas such as Morgantown or Charleston, deer is going to be your first problem. I suggest an 8 to 10 foot tall netting fence around with some solid posts in there as well. If you take some high tensile or electric fence wire, run it around the top, you can zip tie that fence to the top and keep out most of your larger animals, your deer, and even your pets. You need to keep your pets out there. Neighborhood cats, if they get into your raised beds garden, turn that thing into a litter box. Do not put anything in that garden this year. Do not eat anything out of it. We need to sanitize that soil. And we'll get more into that, how to sanitize the soil for if you have some animals get in there in a later class. The next thing is small rodents, and your pets can fall in that category too sometimes. If you have moles, groundhogs, you want to take wire, like chicken wire, place that underneath of the soil and make that into a 90-degree angle with the bottom 90 shooting out to around the perimeter of that garden. That way when that mole goes to dig, they're going to run into that wire head on, and then they're going to try to turn down, and they're going to hit that wire too, and they'll go back up and come out. And the reason you have moles in there, some usually white grubs and worms they like to get in there and eat. So make sure you keep that gate on your garden shut at all times, especially when you're in there and not in there. When you're in there, your dog or cat may try to come in and you're thinking, oh, well, that's cute, my dog's in here helping me. That may not be the best case. Okay, so you got all that figured out. Now what do you do? you're going to break ground on that area. Okay, lay out that area east to west. If you're going to grow corn, put that corn on the top line of your garden. That way it's not going to overshade your tomatoes, green beans, radishes, potatoes. That way they get equal amount of sun, because that corn can get pretty thick and pretty linky on you and block out a lot of sun. Remove weeds before tilling. You may think, okay, I'm going to cut up all these weeds with my rototiller. They're going to die. They won't come back. That will not be the case. Most of our weeds will thrive pretty well when you go cut them, because you spread their DNA material throughout your landscape, and those things are going to come back pretty thick. Especially if you have a Johnson grass in your hayfield, you don't want to go tilling your Johnson grass, because that will cause that problem to get worse. Same with hemp dog bane as well. If you're going to use a smaller tiller, make sure you remove that grass, because sometimes those tillers don't have enough weight to get down into that soil to get that grass off there. And hand test the moisture. You'll take a handful of soil from your area, squeeze it. It should crumble. It may stick a little bit, but if it's just clumps, it's too wet to till that soil. You're going to get in there with your tiller. You're going to gum it up, and you're going to be mad, saying all kinds of words you probably shouldn't be saying, and just frustrated because your tiller's clogged up with mud. And you want to till that from corner to corner. So you staked it out. You're going to go corner to corner, back and forth, and make sure you're covering that area pretty thorough. And watch out for debris. Watch out for rocks. Watch out if you bought that house off somebody else and they buried their dog out back or something. Watch out for that area so you don't go digging up bones. And just watch out for general debris. You can do some damage to a rototiller tine with a big old rock. Some alternative gardening methods compared to the traditional in-grounds we just discussed are your high tunnels, raised beds, and containers. Okay, we had a good question in the chat box. What is a high tunnel? A high tunnel is essentially a greenhouse without a concrete floor and without heating. They are easy to build, maintain, and move. If you are interested in a high tunnel and getting a high tunnel constructed at your place, I would contact your local NRCS USDA office and ask them about their high tunnel programs in your local conservation district. We've had a huge increase in high tunnels in the district my two counties are in, and in the district down here, the Guyan Conservation District between Cabell, Wayne, Lincoln, Mingo. There's been high tunnels been flourishing all over the place. They grow like corn right now. Main thing is these are affordable. They extend that growing season. You may not be able to put tomatoes out right now outside in your raised beds, but if you get a high tunnel, we have one producer in Wayne County. He started putting tomato plants out a couple weeks ago, because the plastic on top helps keep that high tunnel warm, and those plants won't get chilled as bad. For irrigation and these things, okay, I cover this big area. Now, how do I water? Because rain is not going to get on that garden. We suggest getting drip irrigation or drip tape and running that along your plants. That keeps that water from splashing. If you're getting the water with the water hose, you're watering those plants from the top. That can increase chance of disease, fungus, bacteria, because they like moist, humid environments. So you need to use the drip irrigation, properly mix whatever fertilizer you may use in that mixture, and use that as your water solution for your high tunnel. And some plants will do better in high tunnels than not. Here are just some styles of high tunnels that are available. They kind of fit whatever look you're going for. So when you think about a high tunnel, it has two sides. It has the end wall and that side wall. The end wall is going to be the door you go into, take your equipment in. And the side wall is going to be your long running side. And that will allow you, it will allow you to lift up the plastic on the sides, and make sure you have a nice solid netting down through there as well to keep, again, animals out of that high tunnel, so they're not going in there and you go in there, groundhog just ate all your tomatoes. So you put all that work in, do nothing. Make sure you have that wired off. That'll allow you to cool that high tunnel during the summer properly ventilates so you're not cooking your tomatoes or peppers. These are just some varieties you'll see out there. Okay, so we're going to raise beds. This is for people that have some yard space, but they may not have enough space to build a high tunnel, build a small greenhouse, do a traditional garden. Or they may have some really poor quality soil. They bought a place, they have a house or another house burnt down 40, 50 years ago, and really you may not know what's in that soil. So if you don't know the background of that soil, I suggest raised beds. It's a safer bet than not. If you have soil that is contaminated, there is a lab down in the Beckley area. I can get you all more information on that because I spoke to an agent up in north central Ohio, and they were doing community gardens, and they had a site selected. All this stuff was wonderful for it, and then they ran a soil sample for it, and it came back high beryllium. So, knowing the background of that property, they found out, oh, well, a beryllium plant was there. So, you might want to think about contaminants in that area, especially strip mines and all the industrialization we've had in the state here. You may just keep that in mind. So, there are three basic types of raised beds. You have the raised ground beds, supported raised beds, and the containerized. And when I mean containerized, I don't mean containers. I mean, we'll talk about it in a second. For a raised ground bed, okay, these are the simplest form. They have no outside structure, no wood, no timbers, nothing holding that soil into place. So these are very simple, low input, but they are going to require some great more management and maintenance than the other beds. So first off, you need to decide the size of your bed. Okay, how far can I reach? Because you do not want to get in there on your soil, because that will just compact that soil down harder and make it harder for your roots to penetrate and grow like that you'd want. Usually we want these between 6 to 8 inches high, and they need 2 feet between beds. That gives you enough room to take that wheelbarrow down there, or if you're picking beans, take a milk crate, a stool, and sit down. That way you're not stepping on it, sitting on your other row. Okay, so here's a graphic on how wide you want it to be. Again, after this presentation is over, I will send this PowerPoint out to everybody, and then the YouTube link will come out later this week, hopefully tomorrow. So how to build that up. So you need to bring in between 4 to 6 inches of finished compost, peat moss, and or well-rotted manure. Again, you do not want chicken manure, like fresh chicken manure from the poultry house down the road. That stuff can burn up your plants. You need to till that into the ground, into the soil that's already there. You want the top to be flat and the sides to come up at a 40-degree angle. This should keep that into a real nice shape for you and keep that up to form. And after you've done that, you need to let it rest for 1 to 2 weeks before planting. This will allow that soil to settle and those sides to really firm up for you so they're not falling over and sliding out. First thing is you need to try to stay out of those beds. Keep the kids out, and you think, oh, it's kids, little Sally in there run around. That's not great management of those beds. Use hand tools, as we mentioned before, to help remove those hard to reach weeds, and keep an eye on the sides. If they start to slip, you need to use that rake we talked about in the first couple slides to help reshape those and form those up. And then after the season is, you need to increase that organic matter on the beds. So you had some compost out back. You've kept that as the right temperatures, turned that as much as you needed to. You may want to put that after the growing season. For supported raised beds, these are those that are framed up with a solid material. Those can be wood, stone, and brick. I saw a story from Maryland Extension, and they were using bamboo. They took bamboo, laid it horizontally, tied them together, staked them in the ground, and that was keeping their form. Kind of gave a little bit more unique look to it than the wooden boards you may see as supports for raised beds. You may think about what size, shape, or form to use. That's all personal preference. You can do a lot of different sizes or shapes. I saw stars, circles, rectangles, triangles, any type of shape you'd like. Those will work pretty well for you. Prepare the ground as you would a raised ground bed, as I mentioned earlier. And these can be made wider than 5 feet. If you go that wide, you need to put bridges across the top of that in between your rows. That way you have access to walk across that bed, but not in the bed. Okay, you do not want your feet, you do not want to stand in your raised bed because that will just compact that soil. And then framing the supported bed, okay, I'm gonna go to Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever it is. What do I need to do to build my own raised bed? Okay, first off, there are some really good kits out there. You can order, go purchase. Tractor Supply had a couple the other day. You slide them right together. Pretty easy peasy if you don't have a lot of drills or hammers. That might be something to look into. You take a 2x6 of untreated lumber, because those treated lumber, those chemicals can leach into that soil and get into your plants as well. And turn the heartwood into it. That will allow that, when that wood goes to warp and bend, that will allow it to go out instead of in. If that hardwood goes in, it'll cause that soil to go up and over the top. You don't want that. You want to go down and in. And add or remove the proper amount of soil. So you want that soil to be flush with the top. That gives you more soil to work with for those roots underneath. Here are some materials you need for a raised bed if you plan to go about different routes. Paint the wood exterior with exterior latex paint to minimize soil contact with that treated wood. If you're going to go the treated wood route. Treat the wood with a semi-transparent oil-based stain. Apply a heavy plastic liner between the treated wood frame and your garden soil, allowing for soil drainage. And you can build that with a decay-resistant type of wood, such as cedar, black cherry, or oak. And there's a host of other ones as well, like black locust. And for those non-wood materials, concrete blocks, bricks, synthetic lumber, bamboo, whatever it might be, could work for you. I would suggest staying away from tires because that rubber can leach in there and you do not want that. Okay. And some other things you may want to stay away from are your railroad ties, because they were treated with chemicals, especially if they're newer, and those older ones have too. If you're going to use railroad ties, make sure those they're old and everything's wore off of them. Lumber treated with a product known as CCA, or copper, chromium, and arsenic. Again, arsenic is a carcinogen. You do not want that in your plants, because if you're going to eat your plants, you don't want to eat arsenic. Some advantages of raised beds include they warm up quickly in the spring, because that wood is a big attractant reflector of light. So that light's going to get in there and warm up that soil. They drain well, increase available rooting area, less compaction and erosion because you never walk in the bed, and provides greater yields per unit area due to high fertility and increased root growth. Disadvantage, upfront labor and expenses. Dries out quickly if the weather is hot and dry. Again, that board is really going to heat up that ground. And they're relatively permanent. You must plan the garden around bed dimensions and configuration. So you need to, okay, am I going to do it this way, this, that, the other, look at that kind of thing. And they don't work on slopes unless terraced. So West Virginia, we have a lot of hills. There's that saying, you know how to tell cows from West Virginia? One legs on the left side are shorter than the right side because they've been walking on the hills all their life. So those will not work because that raised bed can collect water at the bottom and drown out those plants.
Evan,
Hey, yes, ma'am.
we have a question about the raised beds. Is it better to line the inside of the raised bed or till the soil under the bed for more depth?
I would say till the bed is better. That way, if it does drain real well, if it doesn't drain, you're not going to be drowning your roots out. It's going to go to the soil below. Root movement's better than no movement, in my opinion. Some people will line their beds with cardboard. That kind of helps in their thought, keep weeds out, because your ground will have a weed bank underneath. Okay, here are some ways to fill your own raised beds. Once you have your raised bed in place, you can fill it with a compost and garden soil, or purchase topsoil at a 1-to-2 or 1-to-1 ratio. If you're going to buy from a local vendor, make sure they're selling you good quality soil, not field dirt or shavings out of the neighbor's horse stall that they think they're going to get off once they're going to sell off and pawn off on somebody. I know a guy thought he was getting some pretty good soil in for his raised beds. They came to unload it, and it was pretty much just wood chips, and that will not go well for a garden. And you could tell that summer he planted corn, and the corn was real yellow. Not the cobs, the plants themselves. Leaf grow is an example of a commercial compost, and that's made from municipal yard waste. I found that from University of Maryland Extension, so you may check out and see what they have available. If you're using existing garden soil, have it tested, again, by sending it to the soil test lab and see what's in there. Okay, container raised beds. This really goes well for those people that just have mobility issues, can't get around real well, or in wheelchairs. If it in those areas that you're going to do it in your local park, courtyard, the church, you may not think about doing the traditional short raised bed or in-ground bed. You may think about doing the container raised beds. These help to build the beds up to about 1 foot high, and it keeps it from getting banged over, knocked out of whack, and those plants will be a little bit safer in that area. For those in wheelchairs, a bed that is about around 2.5 feet tall will work well. Depends on how high their wheelchair adjusts for them and how far into that bed they can reach. To do that, you can place 1 2x4 and 3 2x6s on top of each other horizontally. And then you take some 2x4s and nail those to the inside vertically to give those things some support on the inside. That'll hold that together real well. Again, these will need soil and organic matter added each year, because that soil will naturally just compress itself down, so you need to add some more in there over the years.
Evan,
yes, ma'am.
we have another question about the raised beds.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you line a cedar raised bed with weed fabric and fill it with potting or garden soil mix if you have no dirt or rocky undergrass? So line it with weed fabric. I mean, yes. Personally, we line ours with weed fabric.
Yeah, I don't see why that would hurt.
And if we don't, we put the layer of cardboard to help keep the grass down.
Right. Yeah, I don't see why that would hurt. It's probably a really good idea. It keeps that cedar wood. It's rot resistant, but it can grow pretty well for you. It will last longer if you keep areas off it. Can you use cinder blocks for your bed? Yes, ma'am. We have a school in Pritchard, the elementary school there. They use cinder blocks to construct a raised bed out of. Again, it depends on, you can plant some plants inside the squares of your cinder blocks. Again, just think about the amount of root space you will need for that tomato plant. That might not be the best way to place that. Okay, for most raised beds, you will want those beds to be between 6 and 8 inches deep, but you will want to go deeper for root crops. Container gardens, if you're going into containers, you may not have enough space for a raised bed. These have a wide variety of materials that can be used for your normal pots you can buy or you've kept forever. Polyethylene plastic bags. I know I went to Tractor Supply the other day. They had some strawberries in a bag to hang on your porch or outside. That might be something you're interested in. Jugs, the ice cream containers, barrels, and planter boxes. Again, stay away from tires because they are rubber and that stuff can leach into your soil. Have another chat. Okay. For root crops, I'll get that in a second, but you want it between 8 to 12 inches deep for those roots to really get down there and grow. And then somebody asked, their raised bed is 2 cinder blocks high. I filled the bottom with twigs and branches, cardboard, and shredded paper. That should work pretty well for you. Because a cinder block's probably about 5 to 6 inches tall. You're looking at 10 inches to a foot deep there. So you're pretty good there. And really, it's sometimes not how high you go, it's how wide too. Because that was one of our problems at the elementary school there in Pritchard. Those raised beds were just a little bit too narrow and didn't give those plants enough room for the roots to grow. Okay, again, think about the appropriate size containers for the variety of plant. Some plants need a lot of room for the roots, and some they don't need nearly as much. Okay, you got a container garden. Okay, what kind of potting mix am I going to put in there or soil? Use a potting mix. This will drain better. And then your soil, it's lighter, fluffier than soil. Soil will hold that water real well, and sometimes that's not great for your pots because those pots are meant to drain. Read the label on the potting mix. Some will already come with a fertilizer mix in there or a seed booster, so you may not need to add as much fertilizer later on because it already has some in there. If you want to make your own, here's a recipe for 2 bushels I found from, I believe, University of Illinois Extension. You take a bushel of peat moss, a bushel of vermiculite, and 1.25 cups of ground limestone. Mix that together. And then these are some fertilizers you can add to that to help boost that as well.
Evan, there's a question.
That is a good question, Robin, because I was thinking of the same thing. It's how fast they break down. And if you go with tires, the inside the tires too, if you have tires outside, you've kept them there for years, mosquitoes get in there, those hold water really well. And if it's holding a lot of water in there, those things may not drain as well too. I hope that answers that question because I was kind of thinking the same thing too when I was going about researching. For those that are going to add some fertilizer to it, these are some different fertilizer you can put in there. A 0-20-20 is 20% phosphorus and 0% nitrogen and potassium. So you want a 1/2 cup of that, or a 1/4 cup of 0-45-0, or 1 cup of 5-10-5. Mix that all in there really well, and you can use that as your potting mix or soil. Okay, for those that are doing raised beds, you may think about using square foot gardening, and we made some great templates with our Cricut there at the office that are really easy to use. I can send those designs out as well, or how to make them. These reduce water usage because you're not watering the rows, you're just watering that square. This gives you more opportunity to increase crop rotation, which decreases disease and other problems going forward, less weeding, and that you want that soil at least 6 inches deep, and then 12 inches recommended for those root crops. And a lot of people are going to square foot gardening. We've been using it in the schools, and the kids really seem to enjoy it. Okay, so what to plant where per square foot? For 2 square feet, you only need to plant 1 squash, 1 cucumber, or 1 melon. That gives that plant enough room for both its roots and vines to grow out for you. For 1 per square foot, you want your tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, broccoli, cabbage, or corn. For 4, it's your lettuce, chards, marigolds, or kohlrabi. 6 is vining plants such as your beans or peas if you have kids. This is a great activity you can do. Put a trellis in there for your peas to grow up. And if you have more than 1 kid in the house, or you and the kid, you can say, okay, we're going to measure our peas, and whoever gets the longest pea plant this summer gets free ice cream from Dairy Queen or something. Not for 9 plants per square foot, onions, beets, bush beans, or peas, your garlic or spinach, and for the 16 plants per square foot are your carrots and radishes. Here are some additional resources you can check out in various land-grant institutions throughout the country. And if you're going about researching things online, there are a lot of great websites out there. There are a lot of not good websites out there. Make sure you are looking at a reputable website that is extension-based or Department of Ag, your state Department of Ag, using that information. Because there's a lot of websites out there that will just sell what we call foo-foo dust to you. I got Magic Elixir out here. The snake oil is going to work real well for you this year for your garden. Again, I'll be sending this information out as well, so you can just click those links on the PowerPoint and go. If you have questions after the class, these are my email and phone numbers. The best way to reach me at this time is through email. Okay, so we had some. Okay. Oh, we have some questions. I'll get, where did it go? Delete chat box. Okay. So we had a question about using sawdust. I created a lot of sawdust from a woodworking shop. If I used it as a mulch to prevent weeds, it will lower the N2 content in the soil. Again, it will only be on the surface of the soil between plants and not tilled into the soil. I don't think that will hurt too bad because that's acting more of a mulch than anything at that point. You just want to make sure you remove that at the end of the growing season so you're not tilling that in there. I'm always afraid of overwatering. What is a good rule of thumb for watering? Are there any overwatering beginning signs to be aware of? We'll get more detail next week. You want to go through the Goldilocks test? If you pick it up and that soil just crumbles away, breaks apart on you, it's too dry. If you pick it up and it's sticking to your fingers a little bit, it's probably about right. And if it's just a big old mud clob, you're way too you're watering too much. Will home composting be addressed in a future class? It can be. That's why I like doing these chats. We get suggestions going on in the next few weeks. That way I cater more to what's going on for you all and not what I think might be relevant. We haven't talked about bugs yet. That will be in 2 classes. We'll talk about all the insects, disease, pathogens, good bugs, bad bugs during that class. And for containers, can we reuse soil from the previous year? Yeah, you can reuse soil from the previous year. You may want to add some fertilizer to that, add some vermiculite, help get that soil back up to snuff. And yes, this session has been recorded, and I will be sending it to our communications team. It'll be uploaded to YouTube. I'll send that link out to my whole email list that everybody was great with sharing me, because we had, as I said, close to 200 people sign up for this class. The next class will be next Tuesday from 4 to 5 as well.
Evan, did you see the message about the squash bugs?
Yeah, I'm talking about squash bugs in 2 weeks. And all the different bugs we will have. Is it the same Zoom link for your next class?
I think it's in
that should work because I did it as a recurring Zoom. This is my first time doing that, so we'll see.
and if anybody didn't pre-register and we don't have their email, just privately message in the chat box there to James Wilson.
Yeah. If you didn't pre-register or you didn't fill out the survey online through Qualtrics, make sure you put your email in the chat box or send me an email so I could get that information in there. I'm sure we had some people sending out the link to some friends and family instead of just me forwarding it along, which is great. That's awesome connectivity we've had throughout the state. Anything we should be doing prior to next week? You can go ahead and do your soil sample, go ahead and get that sent in. If you wouldn't mind, send me a list of varieties of plants you're thinking about selecting for next year. I will be sending out after this meeting is over, I will be sending out a brief survey to everybody as an evaluation to see what kind of stuff I can improve on, what stuff you've done before, that type of thing. And then I'll be sending out one later in the week leading into next Tuesday's class to get what kind of information y'all would like. Okay, I will stop recording at this time. Again, the best way to reach me is from my email because we've been told we probably won't be back in our offices at a regular time until hopefully June. So send me an email. That's the best way. We do check our office phone calls periodically, just when we have to get there to get some stuff for supplies. Again, this is recorded and will be shared once it's uploaded onto YouTube. And it is stop sharing, and I hit stop recording now.